The sprawling estate of the Vancroft family felt less like a home and more like a museum of success. But to Elias Vancroft, it was just the lonely backdrop to his childhood. His mother, an acclaimed philanthropist, and his father, a titan of industry, were perpetually globetrotting, leaving their only son in the capable, loving hands of Maria. Maria wasn't just his nanny, she was his anchor, the only person who saw past the Vancroft name to the boy beneath. Her daughter, Ilara, just a year his junior, was his shadow and his closest confidant. They navigated the gilded cage together, the master's heir and the housekeeper's daughter, their differences in status invisible to their innocent eyes. Their days were a chaotic, joyful blur of hide-and-seek among priceless antiques, whispered secrets under the grand oak in the gardens, and shared hot chocolate in the massive, echoing kitchen. Elias taught Ilara to play chess. She taught him that the best stories were the ones you made up yourself. Their bond was a tapestry woven from shared laughter and quiet understanding, a fortress against the cold indifference of the mansion walls. Elias's favorite memories were of Ilara's spirited arguments over whose turn it was to pick the movie, and Maria's comforting presence as she patched up their scrapes, humming a lullaby he still remembered. They were his true family, the warm, beating heart inside his otherwise sterile existence. He couldn't imagine a life where they weren't just a hallway away. That naive certainty, he would soon learn, was the cruelest luxury. The year Elias turned 16, the Vancroft legacy pressed down with crushing finality. A carefully worded, emotionally distant letter arrived, detailing his immediate enrollment in a prestigious, exclusive boarding school in Switzerland. It was part of his preparation for taking over the family conglomerate, Vancroft Global. Elias's protests were met with his father's steely resolve and his mother's well-meaning but detached apologies. The announcement of his departure was immediately followed by a decision that broke Elias's heart. Maria was being let go. Budget restructuring, his father had claimed, a meaningless corporate term that felt like a deliberate act of cruelty. Elias remembered the agonizing farewell, standing on the marble steps as a modest sedan piled high with their belongings waited. Maria, trying to be strong, pulled him into a hug that smelt of lemon polish and safety. Ilara, her eyes red, thrust a small, worn, hand-carved wooden bird into his hand. "Don't forget me, Elias," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Never," he promised, clutching the bird like a lifeline. He watched them drive away until the car was a distant speck, taking with it the warmth and light of his childhood. The silence that descended upon the Vancroft estate was absolute, a heavy shroud woven from absence. He wrote letters, dozens of them, but they always came back marked "Return to Sender, Address Unknown." They had vanished, swallowed by the vast anonymity of the city, leaving Elias with a hollow ache and a relentless, haunting guilt that his privilege had somehow failed to protect them. 10 years dissolved into the relentless pursuit of corporate dominance and lonely, rigorous study. Elias, now 26, returned to the country not as a wistful boy, but as the undisputed CEO of Vancroft Global. He was a sharp-suited, uncompromising man whose reputation for shrewd deals preceded him. The press called him the Golden Heir, but he felt more like an automaton, executing the family plan. He inherited the empire, but not the happiness. His first action was to initiate a quiet, personal investigation. He put his best security consultants and private investigators on the task: find Maria and Ilara. The initial reports were frustratingly thin. Maria had been paid a severance and disappeared into the labyrinthine suburbs. The paper trail went cold within months. Elias was obsessed. Every late-night strategy session, every signed multi-million-dollar contract was underpinned by the unfulfilled promise he'd made as a boy. He'd even returned to the grand estate, only to find it soulless, the memory of their laughter an almost painful echo. He focused his corporate energy into expansion, an aggressive move into urban redevelopment, using the work to distract from the gnawing emptiness. It was during a tour of a newly acquired, run-down commercial property in the gritty downtown industrial district, an area Vancroft Global would typically avoid, that fate decided to intervene, using the most dramatic, terrifying vehicle possible, a near-fatal accident. Elias's custom black sedan, a silent armored beast, cruised slowly down a narrow, rain-slicked side street. The air was thick with exhaust and cheap street food, a stark contrast to the perfumed and sterile air of his corporate offices. Elias was preoccupied, reviewing the blueprints for the new development, his driver, Thomas, expertly navigating the treacherous city streets. Suddenly, a figure darted out between two parked delivery trucks, a hunched, small woman carrying a heavy, oversized bag. Thomas slammed on the brakes. The tires screamed a painful protest against the wet asphalt. Elias was thrown forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. He immediately bolted out of the car, adrenaline overriding his CEO composure. The woman was trembling, crouched on the wet pavement, thankfully unharmed, but clearly in shock. Elias reached out a hand, his voice thick with concern. "Ma'am, are you all right? I'm so sorry, I didn't see you." The woman slowly looked up, her face lined and tired, a network of wrinkles around her kind eyes. Her hair was streaked with gray, pulled back into a simple bun. It was in that instant, beneath the harsh glow of a flickering street lamp, that the world stopped spinning for Elias. The way she held her worn handbag, the familiar, gentle curve of her jaw, the unique, heartbreaking exhaustion in her eyes. It couldn't be anyone else. "Maria," he whispered, the name catching in his throat, a ghost from his past made suddenly, miraculously real. She blinked, confusion replaced by a flicker of disbelief, then a wave of overwhelming, protective emotion. "Master Elias? Is that really you?" she murmured, her voice the melody he hadn't heard in a decade. Elias ushered Maria into the warm, protective silence of his car, dismissing Thomas to secure the property site. The contrast between the sleek luxury of the sedan and Maria's worn coat was a visual punch to Elias's gut. He drove them immediately to a discreet, high-end cafe, a place where he could speak without being recognized. Maria, initially hesitant, soon succumbed to the relief of his familiar presence. She recounted the decade of struggle with a quiet dignity that only deepened Elias's shame. After leaving the Vancroft estate, they had moved from cheap apartment to cheaper apartment, the severance pay dwindling quickly in the face of medical expenses, a chronic, low-grade illness Maria had managed to hide during her employment. Elias learned the harsh realities of their life. Maria had worked grueling hours as a cleaning supervisor in various low-wage service jobs. But the worst blow came when she spoke of Ilara. "She never stopped studying, Elias, even in those cramped places. She's brilliant, but life is hard on good people." Ilara, unable to afford university, had taken the most stable job she could find to support her mother. The revelation was crushing. Ilara was a cleaner, working the graveyard shift at the corporate headquarters of Meridian Dynamics, Vancroft Global's fiercest, most ruthless competitor, earning barely above minimum wage. The irony was a bitter pill. The daughter of the man who owned half the city was scrubbing the floors of the very rival, trying to dismantle his empire. Elias clenched his jaw. The image of Ilara, the vibrant girl who debated philosophy with him, reduced to invisible labor, fueling a cold, hard determination to right the wrongs of the past. He moved with the speed and precision of a CEO closing a merger. Within 48 hours, Maria and Ilara's lives were fundamentally restructured. He bought a beautiful, cozy house in a quiet, leafy suburb, far from the polluted air of the downtown area,
registering it in Maria's name. Maria, after a thorough medical checkup, paid for by Vancroft Global, was gently persuaded to accept an advisory role for the estate management division, a position that involved minimal physical labor and offered a substantial, respectful salary. The real challenge was Ilara. He didn't just want to give her a job, he wanted to restore her potential. He arranged a meeting not in his intimidating boardroom, but in a small, neutral library cafe. Ilara walked in looking older, more guarded, but still possessing the fire in her eyes he remembered. He bypassed the apologies and the pity, offering her a position as a junior research analyst in Vancroft Global's corporate strategy department. Your job is to think critically, Ilara, to apply that sharp mind you used to beat me at chess to business, he stated simply.
He didn't stop there. Knowing her academic drive, he leveraged his contacts and secured her a full scholarship to the prestigious Royal University's evening program, allowing her to work during the day and pursue her degree in business economics at night. Ilara, initially suspicious of this sudden benevolence, saw the genuine, desperate hope in Elias's eyes, the man wrestling with the ghosts of his childhood neglect. She accepted, her gaze meeting his, a silent acknowledgement of the debt and a promise of her own resilience. Ilara thrived in the structured, challenging environment of Vancroft Global. She possessed a keen intellect honed by years of making ends meet and a practicality that many of the privileged, fresh out of business school analysts lacked. Her unique perspective, understanding the company from the ground up, literally, gave her insights others missed. Elias watched her trajectory with proud intensity. She was a sponge for knowledge, quickly mastering the complex algorithms of market forecasting. Their professional relationship was intensely collaborative. Long hours were spent in Elias's private office dissecting rival strategies, Vancroft's expansion plans, and Ilara's rapid progress. These late-night sessions blurred the lines between employer and friend, resurrecting the easy intellectual companionship of their youth. But the status difference was a constant, unspoken barrier. Elias saw the woman she had become, fiercely independent, beautiful in her quiet intensity, and his childhood affection deepened into a complex adult devotion. He found himself dressing better, working harder, motivated by the desire to be worthy of her respect. He felt the pull of the Vancroft guilt, constantly checking his motives. Was he helping her or merely buying his own redemption? One evening, analyzing Meridian Dynamics' aggressive market penetration tactics, Ilara pinpointed a crucial, subtle flaw in their projected acquisitions model. Elias stared at the numbers, then at her. Ilara, this is brilliant. This saves us billions. Her success was his triumph, and the proximity to her was becoming the only thing that felt real in his life. As Ilara's contributions became undeniable, culminating in a major successful bid against the Meridian Dynamics acquisition, she was promoted again, becoming Elias's trusted executive strategist. Her new proximity to Vancroft's most sensitive data, and to Elias himself, did not go unnoticed by the outside world. Meridian Dynamics, led by the enigmatic and fiercely competitive CEO, Victor Thorne, began to take a pointed interest in Ilara. Elias was fiercely protective, shielding her from the media and from Thorne's known tactics of corporate espionage and aggressive recruitment. Thorne, an older, polished operator, saw Ilara's rise as a direct threat. He viewed Vancroft Global's sudden, sharp shift in strategy, the one engineered by Ilara, as a personal affront. Thorne began sending subtle, flattering feelers, high salary offers, and even unsolicited, luxurious gifts to Ilara, positioning himself as a mentor who truly understood her untapped potential. Elias, witnessing this calculated manipulation, felt a cold jealousy intertwined with his protective instincts. He knew Ilara was loyal, but Thorne was relentless, and the moral weight of Ilara's past years of struggle was leverage Elias feared Thorne might exploit.
One evening, after a tense, successful project launch, Elias walked Ilara to her car in the executive garage. "Thorn is dangerous, Ilara. He'll try to use you," he warned, his voice low. Ilara looked at him, her expression complex. "I worked for him, Elias," she reminded him, her voice clipped. "I cleaned his office. I saw his schedules, his trash, his secrets. Thorn doesn't scare me. He interests me." The easy camaraderie between Elias and Ilara was suddenly interrupted by a mundane act. Elias dropped his expensive watch, and as he bent to retrieve it, the small, worn, hand-carved wooden bird Ilara had given him on the day they parted slipped out of his pocket. It had been his secret comfort, a piece of their past he always carried. Ilara saw it resting on the marble floor. Her face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice dangerously flat. Elias picked it up, smiling faintly. "You gave it to me, Ilara, 10 years ago. I told you I'd never forget." He held it out to her, expecting a nostalgic smile. Instead, Ilara recoiled, stepping back. "That's impossible," she whispered, shaking her head. "I gave that bird to someone else." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about? It was you. You were crying." "No," she interrupted, her voice rising. "I carved 2 of them, one for you and one for my brother." Elias stared at her, the blood rushing to his ears. "Your brother? You never mentioned a brother." Ilara's eyes welled up, her barrier finally cracking. "He was older than me, Elias, a few years older than you. His name was Alex. He was Maria's son. We grew up together. He taught me to carve. But he didn't leave us with us that day. He disappeared a few months before you went to boarding school." The pieces clicked into Elias's mind with sickening clarity. Maria's quiet sadness, the half-answered questions, the years of struggle that felt somehow heavier than just financial stress. The person he thought he was protecting was not the only one. There was a missing Vancroft connection, a hidden truth Ilara carried, a family secret that Maria had desperately guarded from the Wumdi who had everything. The revelation of Alex, Ilara's older brother, sent Elias reeling into a new frenzy of investigation, this time fueled by a desperate need for the full truth. He confronted Maria gently but firmly. Sitting in her new, comfortable living room, Maria finally broke her decade-long silence. Alex, always a rebellious, fiercely protective soul, had despised the servitude of their life at the Vancroft mansion. He had left home abruptly just before Elias's departure, desperate to find a faster way to provide for Maria and Ilara, angry that Elias, the golden boy, had everything while they struggled. Maria, fearing her job and the stability it provided for Ilara, had kept it a secret, telling Elias only that Alex was away. The investigators Elias had hired years ago, focused only on finding Maria and Ilara, had never been asked about a missing son. Now, with a name and a past timeline, Elias launched Vancroft Global's entire intelligence division into finding Alex. The data was thin, but one detail emerged from the police archives. Alex had been involved in minor, desperate crimes in the intervening years, a descent that led to a short jail sentence. He was released 2 years ago, having completely cut ties with his family, ashamed of his failure and his past. As Elias pored over the final, frustratingly brief file, a deep sense of dread washed over him. The file indicated that Alex had found work, not as a cleaner or laborer, but in a field requiring high technical skill and secrecy. His last known employer was listed under a cryptic shell corporation, which upon cross-referencing shared the exact same legal address as the head of security for Meridian Dynamics. Elias felt the cold certainty of a trap snapping shut. Alex, the forgotten son, the boy who felt wronged by the system Vancroft represented, was working for Victor Thorne, the man actively trying to dismantle Elias's life's work. The brilliant strategy Ilara had helped him develop, the flaw she had identified in Meridian's acquisition plan, it all suddenly looked less like brilliant analysis and more like expertly crafted misdirection. Elias now understood Thorne's excessive interest in Ilara. Thorne wasn't trying to recruit her, he was leveraging her. Elias realized the depth of the rivalry was far more personal than he had imagined. He had brought Ilara into the highest levels of Vancroft Global, not knowing she was the key to a far more dangerous game. He had elevated her, given her access to all his most sensitive data under the pretense of redemption, only to put her and his entire company at risk. He sat in his massive, empty office, looking at the security feed of Ilara across the hall, working diligently, her brow furrowed in concentration. Was she an unknowing pawn, or was she a willing participant seeking revenge for her brother's hardship? He felt the forced need to confront the chilling possibility that the woman he loved, the girl who was his only family, might be the Trojan horse in his own citadel. He had to know the truth before it was too late. He prepared to put a discreet surveillance on her, a betrayal that felt like plunging a dagger into his own heart, but necessary to protect everything, including, perhaps, her. Elias didn't install the surveillance. He couldn't. Instead, he waited. He set a corporate trap, deliberately leaking a piece of slightly skewed but crucial Vancroft acquisition data, one only he and Ilara had access to, one that would only benefit Meridian Dynamics if intercepted. He watched her every move, searching for the slightest hesitation, the flicker of a secret. The tension between them, though unacknowledged, became a brittle, electric thing. A week later, alone in his office late one evening, Elias received an encrypted message on a secured line, a voice recording intercepted from a burner phone he had linked to Meridian's
known associates. The voice was distorted but chillingly familiar, a low, aggressive tone laced with resentment. The data on the Southeast Asian contracts is clean. Thorne knows the timing. This is enough to crush Vancroft's stock, Ilara. You did good. Elias's blood ran cold. The man on the phone, Alex, had used Ilara's name. But it wasn't the confirmation of her complicity that shocked him. It was the next, quieter voice, clear and cold, cutting through the static. It was Ilara. It's not enough. Thorne won't be satisfied with a stock dip. He wants to bankrupt Elias. That's not the deal, Alex. You promised me you wouldn't go for everything. You promised this was just about getting enough leverage to force a settlement. For you. For what he owes us. The tape ended abruptly. Elias leaned back, his mind racing. Ilara was working with her brother, and through him, with Thorne. But she wasn't seeking Vancroft's total collapse. She was operating within a moral boundary, trying to protect Elias even as she betrayed him. Elias knew he couldn't wait any longer. He needed to force the issue, to understand the parameters of her betrayal and, more importantly, her motivation. He invited Ilara to a private, extremely formal dinner at the Vancroft estate, the mansion of their childhood. He dressed impeccably, exuding the distant, powerful aura of the CEO she worked for. Ilara arrived, poised and beautiful in an elegant dress he had never seen, radiating a cool confidence that unnerved him. The dinner was stiff, the silence punctuated by the clinking of silverware. Elias finally broke the ice. "The Southeast Asian deal," he began, his voice flat. "It's gone south. We lost billions. Our stock is plummeting. Someone, internal, betrayed us." Ilara met his gaze, unflinching. "That's terrible, Elias. How can I help?" Her denial was perfect. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The funny thing is, the intelligence we gathered suggests it was done to force me into a meeting with Victor Thorne, a settlement discussion. They don't want to destroy us. They want something from us." He watched her closely. Ilara's breathing hitched, the first sign of a crack. "Thorne is a predator, Elias. He only wants destruction." Elias smiled, a cold, calculated expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Or perhaps he's being directed by someone who believes I owe them something, someone who knows my guilt."
He pulled out the hand-carved wooden bird and placed it deliberately on the white tablecloth, right between them. The air was thick with unspoken accusation and suppressed grief. Ilara stared at the bird, her composure finally shattered. Tears tracked down her cheeks, but her expression hardened into pure resolve. It was never about money, Elias, not for me. It was about Alex. You bought your way back into my life, bought me a house, a scholarship, a job, and you thought you had fixed everything, but you never bothered to ask why we left, why Maria was so scared. You only saw me, the cleaner's daughter, not him, the angry son who was abandoned by his own mother's employer. She confessed everything. Alex, desperate and jaded, had been recruited by Thorne. Alex had promised Ilara that if she helped him leak Vancroft data to force a meeting, Thorne would use his contacts to completely clear Alex's criminal record, giving him a clean slate and a large settlement, allowing him to leave the country and start a new life. Ilara had agreed, seeing it as the only way to save her brother, but she had systematically filtered the data, ensuring the leaks were never catastrophic, only damaging enough to force a meeting, a compromise. I was trying to use your guilt to save him, Elias, she whispered, but I was also trying to protect you from the worst of it. Alex hates you, hates what you stand for. Thorne hates your company. I was caught between the two. Elias, relieved by the confirmation of her love and horrified by the depth of his neglect, was about to speak, to forgive her, to promise to help Alex legitimately, when the lights in the dining room flickered and died, plunging the opulent room into total darkness. A sudden, sharp metallic sound echoed from the hallway, followed by the distant muffled sound of shouting from the security post. Elias's heart pounded. This wasn't a power outage. This was an invasion. He grabbed Ilara's wrist, pulling her toward a hidden service passage built into the wall. This isn't Alex's plan, he hissed, his corporate training kicking in. This is Thorne. As they stumbled through the dark, narrow passage, Ilara suddenly froze. Elias, wait. I have to go back. My handbag, I left something in it. Elias was furious. There's no time. What is it? Ilara struggled against his grip, her voice desperate. The second bird, the one Alex carved, it has a message inside, a tiny scroll. Alex told me to destroy it if anything went wrong, if Thorne changed the deal. Elias stopped, his mind flashing back to the intercepted call. It's not enough. That's not the deal, Alex. Ilara was right. Thorne had been playing a double game all along, exploiting Alex's resentment to not just cripple Vancroft, but to crush it entirely. He released her. Go, 2 minutes, Ilara. That's all you have. She darted back into the blackness of the dining room. Elias waited, his hand on his phone ready to activate the emergency panic button, listening to the agonizing silence. A muffled scream, quickly cut short, echoed from the dining room. Elias frantically rushed back, pulling the service door open. The dining room was still dark, but a faint light spilled from the hallway, revealing the terrifying scene. Ilara was gone. Her expensive handbag lay ripped open on the floor. The small, empty space where the wooden bird once lay was a gaping void. But the horror wasn't Ilara's absence. It was the figure standing by the shattered French doors, silhouetted against the external spotlight. It wasn't Victor Thorne. It was Alex. He was older, scarred, dressed in tactical black clothing, holding a complex, futuristic-looking device. But the true twist was the woman by his side, standing with chilling composure. It was Maria. She was not struggling. She was positioned like a guard, her hand resting on Alex's shoulder. She looked directly at Elias, the warm kindness of her eyes replaced by a cold, calculating emptiness. "Hello, Elias," Maria said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "We tried to warn you, Master Elias. The real Vancroft secret is that your father wasn't just a businessman. He was the head of the organization that ruined my life, that covered up Alex's father's murder and erased our family's fortune. Thorne, he's just a distraction. We're the silent partners who bought this land and built this house you're standing in, not the Vancrofts. You didn't find us. We led you back here." Alex stepped forward, holding up the device. "The scroll, Elias," he sneered. "It wasn't a warning for Alara, it was a trigger for this. It's an EMP disruptor, and the grand oak you and Alara played under, it's not just a tree, it's the access point to the Vancroft server core, buried 20 feet below. Welcome home, Elias. Everything you thought you owned, everything you thought you were protecting, belongs to us now." Maria raised her hand, a small silver item glinting in the dark. "And now, my dear innocent Elias, we need to ensure the truth dies with the man who tried to buy his way out of this family's revenge. Goodbye."